My wife packed our wedding photos, my daughter's baby blanket, and the living room TV into Jordan's truck while I was on a job site when I got home, so we called him her fairy tale dad. Melissa didn't blink. I laughed like a man about to scream. She said I'd been too boring to remember. He's got a restraining order now. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Back when Melissa and I first moved into our fixer-upper, she kissed me in a paint-streaked tootie and called our home a love project. I believe we were partners. That same couch we saved for now sits in Jordan's place. I wired every light switch myself while she laughed at my dad jokes. Zoe was born under that roof. I didn't see the detachment starting when she began texting Jordan again. Zoe used to fall asleep on Melissa's chest while I sanded the nursery floor. We argued about crib colors. She won with lavender. I still smell the varnish when I pass that room. Melissa used to leave notes in my lung box. Then one day, her phone buzzed nonstop. She said it was work. I caught a glimpse thinking of last night. She snatched it away. I convinced myself it was just spam. I came home early one day and found Jordan's shoes at the door. Melissa laughed it off. He dropped off Zoe's science book. My gut twisted. Zoe stared at the floor. I asked her later, "Did he stay long?" She said, "Mom told me not to tell." My voice cracked. I started sleeping on the couch. Pretending it was back pain, Melissa said I was acting crazy. I almost believed her. Jordan started showing up at Zoe's recitals. No invite, no warning. He brought flowers. Melissa said, "It's sweet he cares." I clenched my fists. My mom asked why Zoe called him J-Daddy. I had no answer. Zoe's drawings had him holding hands with her and Melissa. I was a dot in the background. I threw those pictures away. Melissa cried, accused me of jealousy. I said nothing. Zoe stopped drawing altogether. Melissa's parents came over one night. Drunk on wine and denial. Carol called me obsessed. Bill joked. At least she upgraded. I gripped my beer so hard the can bent. Zoe asked if she could go to Jordan's for the weekend. Melissa smiled like it was normal. I refused. Zoe cried. Melissa called me a control freak. That night, Zoe whispered, "You're scaring everyone." My heart cracked. I said I was sorry. I found Zoe crying in the hallway after school. Her teacher said she wet herself during a pop quiz. Melissa blamed me, said the tension at home made Zoe anxious. But Zoe begged not to go back to Melissa's that night. She clung to my jacket. I held her until she slept. Melissa sent angry texts. "You're poisoning her against me." I didn't reply. Marcus said, "It's time to call a lawyer." Melissa accused me of stalking when I showed up at Jordan's to pick up Zoe. She called the cops. They arrived, calm but firm. I explained it was my visitation day. Jordan smirked the whole time. Zoe hid behind me. The officer asked her who she wanted to go with. She said, "My real dad." Melissa's face froze. Later, she claimed I manipulated Zoe. The court ordered a full custody review. During mediation, Melissa showed a doctored voicemail claiming I yelled threats. I recognized the edit. My voice chopped mid-sentence. Marcus caught it. "Play the full version," he demanded. The mediator listened, nodded slowly. Melissa's smirk faded. Zoe whispered, "Mom told me to delete things from your phone." I clenched my jaw. Melissa asked for a break. Jordan texted her mid-session. I saw the name flash, Fairy Tale Daddy. I nearly walked out. In court, Melissa sat smug in her tailored blazer. Zoe avoided her eyes. When asked about living arrangements, Melissa casually suggested splitting weeks. Zoe whispered to the judge, who requested a sidebar. Then she said out loud, "I want to live with my dad." Mom lies. Gasped echoed. Melissa turned red. I kept still. Marcus touched my arm steady. The judge ordered a custody evaluation. Melissa protested, but the gavel came down sharp. The custody evaluator arrived on a rainy Thursday. Zoe offered cookies. My place was modest but clean. Photos of us hung in the hallway. Bike rides, science fair. The evaluator smiled. Days later, Jordan was arrested for public intoxication outside Melissa's apartment. The court reviewed it. Melissa blamed stress. I said nothing. The evaluator noted Zoe's improved sleep patterns with me. Melissa called it manipulation. Marcus handed over therapist notes. The judge requested full custody recommendations. At the final hearing, Melissa tried tears, claimed she was a misunderstood mother. The judge asked about Zoe's school drop-offs. She'd missed 5. Melissa stammered. I handed over attendance reports and a timeline. Zoe sat clutching her sketchbook. The judge noticed. "What's in it?" he asked. Zoe flipped to open page after page drawings of me, her, at a broken crown between silence. "That's the fairy tale," she said. Melissa's attorney put her hand over her eyes. The judge asked Zoe if she felt safe. She nodded at me. "He listens." Melissa interrupted. "He's poisoning her." The judge raised a hand. "Enough." The room quieted. Marcus passed forward a copy of Melissa's text. "Call Zoe a bargaining chip." Melissa lunged to grab them. Bailiff stepped in. I stayed seated. Zoe grabbed my hand. The judge said, "Custody awarded to Mr. McAllister. Supervised visits for Mrs. McAllister pending review." Melissa collapsed into her chair outside the courtroom. Carol and Bill approached us. Carol had tears in her eyes. "We didn't know." She whispered as Zoe didn't look at them. Bill handed her an old doll from their attic, her favorite as a toddler. She took it silently. I nodded. "Thank you." Melissa stayed behind, refusing to face us. Jordan never showed up. Marcus said, "You did it." I felt numb. Zoe tugged my arm. "Can we get pancakes?" We did. That weekend, Zoe and I cleaned out her old room at Melissa's. She picked what to keep. I boxed the rest. We found a ripped photo of all 3 of us. Melissa had scratched my face out. Zoe handed it to me. I didn't react. Just folded it, tossed it. "That's not us anymore," I said. Later at home, Zoe pinned a new drawing above her bed, me, her, and a tiny heart between us. 2 weeks after the verdict, Melissa showed up at my door, hair disheveled, mascara smeared. "Jordan hit me," she said flatly. I let her sit on the porch. She had a restraining order in one hand, bruises on her wrist. He said I ruined his life. I didn't gloat. I listened. She asked to speak to Zoe. I said not yet. She sobbed. I made a mistake. I didn't argue. I shut the door gently. Zoe found a voicemail Melissa left accidentally. "Tell your dad I'm sorry, even if he'll never forgive me." She played it at breakfast. Eyes searching mine. I didn't flinch. "She's trying," Zoe said. I nodded. "Trying doesn't fix everything." Zoe looked down. Later, she texted Melissa, "I'll think about it." I didn't stop her. Healing wasn't a straight line. It twisted like everything else. But for once, I didn't feel like I was losing. Melissa's cousin Jaime reached out, said she was sorry for staying quiet. Jordan's always been bad news. She admitted, I didn't know how bad. She offered to testify if Melissa tried for unsupervised custody. I thanked her. Jaime dropped by often after that, bringing snacks, helping Zoe with homework. Zoe warmed up fast. One evening she said, "She feels safe." I agreed. Melissa might have lost her family, but Jaime was choosing one. Zoe's teacher called, said she wrote an essay about her real dad, fixing everything broken. He doesn't just fix wires, he fixes people. I didn't cry, but my chest hurt. The principal read it at the parent-teacher night. People clapped. Melissa wasn't invited. Jaime came instead. Afterward, Zoe whispered, "You don't have to be perfect." I said, "Neither do you." We drove home in silence. But it wasn't empty, it was calm. Jordan tried contacting Zoe online through a fake profile. She recognized his voice on a video, came running to me. We contacted Marcus, filed a police report. The restraining order was extended. Melissa finally blocked him on everything. I thought he loved her, she admitted. I didn't say, "I told you so," Zoe said. He's creepy. I held her tighter that night. She asked if Jaime could come over for dinner. I said yes. Melissa enrolled in therapy, voluntary. Her text changed us. Venom. More pauses. "I know it broke us," she wrote once. Zoe didn't reply. Jaime suggested a family session. We went. 1 hour awkward silence. Zoe finally said, "I don't hate you, but I don't trust you." Melissa nodded. For once she didn't cry, just listened. I stayed silent. The counselor said it was a start. I called it a shift. Jaime smiled faintly. Jaime found Zoe's old sketchbook under our couch, torn pages. Scribbled memes. One page had a drawing of Melissa with devil horns. Jaime didn't flinch. "She needed a safe place to feel," she said. We showed it to Zoe. She looked embarrassed. Jaime said, "You're allowed to be mad." Zoe asked if she could start a new one. I bought her the thickest sketch spot I could find. That night, she drew 3 people monsters. Zoe's school counselor called, said Zoe spoke about wanting to help other kids with messy homes. She said her dad listened, even when it hurt. I blinked hard. At dinner, Zoe asked about psychology careers. Jaime, who majored in child development, lit up. They talked for an hour. I watched, grateful, grounded. Melissa texted that night, "Thank you for not turning her against me." I didn't reply. Some things didn't need an answer. One weekend, Zoe asked to see Melissa again, supervised. She packed a tiny gift, an old photo of the 3 of us. Edges taped. "It's part of me," she said. At the center, she'd drawn a new line, Jaime holding Zoe's hand. Melissa blinked. "You look happy," Zoe said. I am. The visit ended with a hug. Not healing but not breaking either. I waited outside, unsure. Zoe came out smiling. "We're okay," she said. Melissa started sending birthday cards, handwritten simple. Zoe pinned them to her corkboard. "It means she's trying." She said. I didn't argue. Jaime framed Zoe's latest drawing, a sunset over our house. "Safe place," scrawled in crayon. Zoe asked if we could all have dinner one day. Melissa too. I hesitated. Jaime said, "That's her hope, not a plan." Zoe smiled. "Yeah, just hope." And somehow, that made it okay. Not fixed, but okay. Jordan violated the restraining order again, showed up near Zoe's school, rested on the spot. Melissa showed up at our door that night. "You were right," she said. About everything. Zoe didn't hug her, but she let her sit beside her. Jaime stayed in the kitchen. I stood in the hallway. Melissa said, "I hope she never calls anyone else fairy tale dad." Zoe whispered. She went. I exhaled. It felt final, like an ending. Now, a year later, Zoe lives with me full-time. She's 13, curious and sarcastic as hell. We cook on Fridays, tacos mostly. She wants to intern with her school counselor next summer. Jaime helps with homework, jokes like a big sister. Melissa visits monthly, calmer, present. Zoe says she's learning to forgive but not forget. That's enough. My old toolbox sits untouched in the closet. Not everything broken needs fixing. Some things just grow around the cracks, and that's okay. Zoe and I built a birdhouse last weekend. Simple, crooked, painted neon. She laughed the whole time. We're architects of chaos. She said. I called it our first draft home. Jaime added glitter. Melissa stopped by, saw it, and smiled, real, not forced. Zoe didn't flinch. She's better, she told me later. Not fixed but better, and nodded. Healing wasn't linear. It showed up in splinters and sparkles. Sometimes it sounded like laughter over too much glue. Zoe's therapist asked her to define safe. She drew our kitchen, Jaime baking, me fixing a loose chair leg. Zoe with a book. "It's where no one lies," she wrote. "That paper's on our fridge now." Melissa saw it once. Nodded slowly. "Looks good," she said. "No jealousy, just grace." I'm not sure when we stopped surviving and started living. Maybe when Zoe stopped calling it your house and started saying home. Quiet victories count too. Melissa sold her condo and moved into a smaller apartment closer to us. She said it was time to downsize mistakes. Zoe visits her twice a month now. No tension. Last time, she came back with a photo, just Melissa and Zoe, baking. I smiled. Melissa texted, "We're working on vanilla and trust." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Jordan's restraining order is now permanent. I never say his name. Zoe doesn't either. He's history, unwritten, unseen. Jaime officially moved in. Zoe cleared a drawer for her without asking. Jaime cried. She made space for me. She whispered, "We celebrate small wins Tuesday movie nights." Zoe's end science, fixing the garbage disposal without drama. Melissa sent a thank you card on Zoe's birthday. No gift, just words. "She's lucky to have you." I kept it. Jaime hung it behind a calendar. Not as a trophy, just proof that storms can end and new weather begins. Zoe asked if we could go back to the old house just once. We stood outside. It looked smaller, faded, not our home anymore, she said. We took a picture, then left. That night, we grilled burgers on our patio. Jaime lit candles. Zoe played music from her new playlist, Nothing Sad. I raised a toast with lemonade, to fairy tales, I said. Zoe smirked. With real endings. We clinked glasses. No magic, just truth. That was enough. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.